Today we're going to learn about overloading. We'll start with method overloading. Java allows a class to contain several methods with the same name. The main requirement is that their types or quantity of their parameters are different, or that both types and quantity differ. Why is it important? Let's go to the code and see it ourselves. Open our project OOP, create a new class, test. And within this class, let's create a method which multiplies two numbers and returns the result. The returned value will be of int type. We will call this method multiple. It will accept two integer parameters, int a and int b, and return their product. Return a times b. And now in method main, let's create a new object, test. Call the just created method. Save the result into a variable result and pass 6 and 5 as the parameters. Now let's print out the value of the variable on the console. Run the project. You can see 30, so everything works well. Now let's pass double type as an argument. And when we try to multiply 6 by 3 by 5 and by 8, we encounter an error, because this method can only accept int type. But what if we want to have a method which will multiply numbers of double, float, and int types? We could create a different method, for example, multiple double. It would accept and return double type, but it's inconvenient. Such a way was used in C programming language, and I think in C++ too. Fortunately, Java supports overloading methods. Open test class and create a method with the same name. It will return data of double type, and it will accept two parameters of double type and return their product. Open the code and you will see an error because we are trying to save the product of double type numbers in an int variable. Changing the type to double resolves the error. So we can run the program and see the result 36.54. Let's delete all the parameters from here and press Ctrl+P. You can see all the possible parameters. This method can accept int a and int b, or double a and double b. Now we want that this method to return a squared number if we pass it only one parameter. We can easily do this. Open the class, create a new method. Let it return int data type and call it multiple too. As a parameter, it will accept one int type argument. Call it a. It returns this number squared. Return a multiplied by a. Go to the code. Let's save the result in an int type variable and pass it only one parameter, 5. Run the program and you will see the result 25. Now when we delete all the parameters and press Ctrl+P, we can see all the possible variants. Now we can pass it int a, int b, double b, and a separate int type variable. Well done! Everything works. Let's now overview such a keyword as static. We will study it in more detail later. So today, it will be just an introduction to this topic. Take a look at our methods and note that they perform some general actions and do not address particular object. Instead of using instance variables, these methods only use parameters passed to them. Let's say we just need to raise a number to the power of 2. For that, we will need method multiple with one parameter. But why do we need to create a separate object test? Should we create hundreds of test objects? This method will work in the same way with all of them. It will accept a number and return it squared. So if the method we have created works in the same way, independently of objects, if it doesn't make use of instance variables which do not exist here, as a matter of fact, we can simply add a keyword static. Let's do this with all the methods, and then calling these methods will not require objects to be created. Let's delete this code which creates an object. Now we'll create variable result, and for calling the method, we will only have to specify the class name test. Put here a dot and call a static method. For example, multiple, with overloading which accepts one parameter. Run the project and the result is the same. We did the same thing when we were calculating square roots. We wrote double sqrt, assign symbol, the name of class math, dot operator, called the static method sqrt, and passed it a number as a parameter. We could do it because the method was declared static. It means that we didn't have to create an object of math class. Let's see what other methods we've got in this class. Type math, dot operator, and see our method sqrt, and also random, which we haven't yet studied, then apps. We're just looking, don't worry that you don't know what these methods do. Method apps returns an absolute value of a number. It means that when it accepts -5, it returns 5. If we pass it 5, it also returns 5. In other words, it returns a modulus of a number. Note that there are 4 methods with the same name, and each of them accepts parameters of different types: int, long, float, double. It's the example of method overloading. It makes possible to use a method with a number of any data type. If you're curious about it, you can take a look at what else we've got here. In the future, we will often use the code written by other programmers. Sometimes, you may not know what this or that class or object can do. In such cases, simply use the dot operator to see what is there. It is advised to read class documentation, but sometimes it's easier to see if there is any available method that looks like what you need. Let's delete this. I have a few more words about methods. Use overloading only if the methods actually perform nearly the same action. For example, you can easily do the following. If a parameter is int, we will return one number times another number. If the parameter is double, we will return one number minus another number. You can do so, but thus you will mislead those who will use your method. They will expect that the method works equally for different types. So the error will be hard to understand. Follow this principle. Your code must be clear to anybody who might use it. And here's the last thing to say about methods before we get to constructor overloading. In order to use overloading, methods must differ from each other by the quantity of the parameters. For example, there is one parameter, here are 2 parameters, or they can differ by the type used. Here int type is used, there double type. And they can also differ by both type and the quantity of the parameters. One returned value is not enough to justify overloading. For instance, we will create 2 methods. Both of them will accept 2 int parameters, but the values they return will be different. It will result in an error because a rule is violated, according to which all overloaded methods must differ by the quantity or type of parameters. That's enough about parameters. Let's deal with constructors. Let's delete this to get rid of the error. And also let's delete everything from method main. Open our box class. Like methods, constructors can be overloaded. The principle is the same. Overloaded constructors differ by parameters. At the moment, we have a constructor with 3 parameters. It is used to set the values of length, width, and height. And what if we want to create a box the size of which are of the same size? I mean a cube. To do that, let's create another constructor. Sometimes I type the word public. Don't pay attention to this. I do this out of habit. We will learn this later, and in this case, this word does not make any difference. If you skip it, the object will work the same way. I will delete this word not to confuse you. This constructor will accept one double parameter. We will call it size, and make the values of all our dimensions equal to size. Width, height, and length. Now let's open method main and create a box. If you want to create a cube, specify only one parameter, for example, 10. Type a semicolon. If you want to create a box with different sizes, call the constructor with 3 parameters. Let's do that. Let's create one box. Call it box2, type the assign symbol, new box, and pass the dimensions 15, 20, 25. Now let's print out the information about the volume on the screen. Let's once again write the method which shows all information on the screen, because we don't want to write it manually again and again. This method will not return anything to us. We will call it showVolume, just like it was called initially. Let's calculate the volume. Double volume, assign symbol, width times length times height. Print the volume out on the console. Get back to method main and call method showVolume for our boxes. Run the program and you can see the volumes 1000 and 7500. We can also create an empty constructor which will not accept any parameters and will set the values of all dimensions equal to 0. Let's create a new constructor box which does not accept parameters and sets dimensions, assigning them the value of 0. Let's also create a third box without passing it parameters. Now let's call method showVolume for it, and we can see that the volume of the third box is 0. Sometimes you have to use the code which was written not by you, but by other programmers. To find out which constructors this object features, do the same as you did with the method. Press Ctrl+P and see a list of available constructors. The first one accepts width, height, and length. The second one accepts one parameter, size. And the last one is a constructor without parameters. We will finish the lesson at this point, not to overload you. But first, I will tell you about one interesting thing. Open class box. Take a look at showVolume method. Here we print out the volume on the console. And before it, we calculate the volume and pass it as a parameter to systemoutprintln method. The same calculation is done in volume method, which returns the volume out of this box. It means that we use one and the same code more than once. It's called code duplication, but nothing will stop us from calling one method inside another one. So we can assign variable volume the value of the method called volume. Thus, we will calculate the volume in this method, return it into variable volume, and print it out on the console. In fact, we can do without an additional variable. As an argument for systemoutprintln method, we can assign the call of method volume. Run the program and you can see that everything works the same way as it worked. That's all. Relax, have a cup of tea, and start doing homework. The task is the following. Create a class called monster. It will contain 3 fields: the number of eyes, the number of legs, and the number of arms. An ordinary monster will look like a human being, so you will create a constructor without parameters, which will assign the value of 2 to all the fields. Then create 3 parameterized constructors. One will accept as a parameter the number of eyes, another one the number of eyes and arms, and the last one all 3 parameters, eyes, arms, and legs. The first constructor sets the number of eyes equal to the passed argument, but it assumes the number of arms and legs as equal to 2. The second constructor will get the number of eyes and arms from the parameter, and the legs will equal 2. The third one will accept all data from the parameters. Also create a method and call it voice. It will not return any values or accept parameters. It will just print out the word voice on the console. Overload this method so that it accepts int data and prints out the word voice as many times as it's specified in the parameter. Then do overloading once again so that a method accepts int and string types. This method will do what the previous one does, but instead of the word voice, it will print out the word which was passed to it as an argument. I hope that this example is not too complicated. In any case, try to solve this problem. The solution will be attached to our next lesson. See you later.